Tonight I'll be working on Dacite. Okay? It's different than the black butter obsidian. This is the black butter obsidian. And some of you may have missed it, but this particular batch of obsidian contains the mahogany obsidian, this black butter stuff. It's the same thing as mahogany obsidian, except it doesn't have the red obsidian in it, you know? It doesn't have these same minerals as the mahogany obsidian. It's solid black. Okay. This is Dacite. I'll be working with Dacite. It's very similar, but it has quirks of its own, like crushing and stepping. Dacite is very crushy, very steppy. It's also very easy to knap, and it's good for beginners if you are patient with it. That's the problem. The problem is having patience with this stuff is very difficult because it will act up on you. It has defects in it a lot of times. It has weird cracks going through it sometimes, especially if you're near the cortex. And it'll snap in half very, very easily. I don't have any really difficult flakes of Dacite, or I would have got one out for you. This is the most wonky piece I have, I think. The other ones are pretty nice flakes. All right, let's see. I do need to sand that down a little bit, but oh well. The reason why you want this flat part smooth is so it doesn't grab and pull and snap. Grab, pull, snap. You don't want that to happen. Now, what about using antler? Doesn't that grab, pull, snap? Oh yes. That's one of the reasons why you see so much debitage on campsites, the real ones. Native American campsites have a lot of debitage. Not only because they did a lot of Flintknapping, but they broke a lot of stuff. And as I've discussed before in some of my videos, if you're working on a specific type with a specific size projectile point, you're going to waste a lot of material getting to that size because you don't want your piece to be too big or too small. If your balls start out big and you need something small, there's a lot of waste. You don't go with the flow. If your particular culture makes small projectile points and you spall off a piece like this, what are you going to do? You're going to whittle it down until you get to a small, culturally appropriate projectile point. And there's a lot of waste, just like that. This produces lots of waste as well because it snaps so easily. This is still within range of many projectile points. Let me see. Archaic points generally are not longer than 3 inches. This is 2 3/4 right now after it broke. Two and a quarter. It won't stay this wide either. Alright, so I gotta be very gentle. Can I use this piece? I can probably use it for a small arrowhead, but it has issues in it. So I probably won't. This actually looks better now than it did before. It's a lot more manageable. Okay. What does that mean to be manageable? It's a lot easier to knap without breaking it. Yeah. The more circular it is, the easier it is to work on it. It's in terms of not breaking it. the more long and narrow it is, the harder it is to work on it. With any material, but especially with glass, obsidian, and dacite. And the obsidian, the black butter obsidian, the flakes want to dive in. All right, you take a flake, you want to produce a long flake on the black butter obsidian or mahogany obsidian, and instead of the termination feathering out, it wants to dive in. Now this one, the material is kind of weak, right? So it just snapped. It didn't dive all the way, but it wants to dive in, which can be a good thing if you're trying to get long flakes, because it'll tend to drive. It won't try to escape too soon, so it'll push long flakes, but you have to watch out that it doesn't dive in. This stuff is even worse. Dacite's even worse than that. But it doesn't allow you to drive nice long flakes, which is contradictory to the other one. This one will let you drive nice long flakes and wants to dive. This one wants to dive, but it wants to dive too soon. It doesn't stay afloat. It wants to go down in. Okay, so you've got to be extra specially careful with the long flakes on this stuff. Now, if you just produce short flakes, you're in good shape. If all you need to do is produce short flakes, you're in good shape. Which means you start out with a relatively thin piece, and just trim around the edges to get your projectile point, and you're done. That's the easiest way to work this and every other material. But everyone wants to see the long flakes. Oh yes, they want to see the long flakes. Why? Because they're pretty. Yep. That's the reason. Attractiveness. There's no other good reason for them. If you can achieve a strong, effective projectile point without them, which you can, so there's really no reason for them. If you look in the archaeological record, most projectile points, knives, and other tools are napped with short flakes. Flakes that don't go past center line in most cases. And if you are getting past center line, it's usually because it's in the beginning stages and you have a lot of mass to work with. And the flakes will travel because you're using a lot of force. And there's high ridges and lots of opportunities. But as it gets thinner and closer to the objective, closer to the size, shape, and style you want, you have less options. So I think one person commented, as the limit approaches zero, you get fractures. That's kind of a clever way of thinking about it. As you decrease the number of options, you increase the chance of fracturing. Okay. Yeah, there's a point, there's a stage where if you're trying to make a certain point, a certain projectile point, you don't have any option. It's getting too small, too narrow, too short. So you're working with platforms and edges and stuff that are very similar to how you would work expediently, because you're just barely trying to get away with what you're doing because you're reaching the end of the requirements, reaching the end of the process, where you can't really reduce much more without ruining the whole thing in terms of the spec you need. The specifications, yeah, specifications cause waste, and the more demanding the specifications, the more waste you produce. If you can afford to have all that waste, it's fine. If you're next to a quarry back in the day, you could be very picky about the shape. But the irony is, it seems like the opposite was true in many cases. It seems like the further they were away from their quarries, the more picky the shape, the more precise the knapping. So that tells me that they were knapping probably at specific times of the year where they would travel to the quarry. They wouldn't be knapping away from the quarry very much, other than resharpening and repurposing their projectile points. But then again, you see some cultures that live near quarries that have points that are all wonky and crudely made. They could have been very precise, but they weren't. So there's something else involved there that I want to try to explore later. Try to figure that one out. But I can't do it yet because I don't have a quarry. In order to simulate that I have a quarry, I have to have lots of money to buy all the rocks that I need. Then I can simulate that I'm living near a quarry, because money is no object, right? So I can just buy whatever I need. But I'm not in that position yet. In fact, I've spent thousands of dollars in the past year, probably more than $2,000 in the past year, combined gas and postage and rock, and I think I broke even or maybe lost money. And I still have not worked a lot of the flakes that resulted from attempts that were failed. I can still use the flakes, but I haven't used them yet. I haven't sold items made with those flakes yet. I've actually sold the flakes in many cases, just the flakes themselves, to try to make up for the loss of income. But it's hard, it's extremely hard to keep track of how much money I actually lost on some of these projects that required very specific and very demanding requirements, very demanding specifications. Yeah, I'm trying to do too much with too little on the edge there. So I'm going to beef up the edge a little bit. The whole process of knapping is reduction, right? You have to reduce. You're reducing, you're sculpting. You can't put back the material you removed. So when anyone ever mentions the words constructing or building, in Flintknapping, you're actually reducing to produce a result. It's not really a construction process. It's a reduction process. And it gets into a philosophical area. And there's a name for it, for a similar concept called a reductive process, which is a little bit different than the process of reduction. But I think there's confusion there. Yep, I won't get into it because it's easier to explain it in writing, just like math. It's hard to explain math with just words. You gotta show symbols and processes and all that kind of stuff. Flintknapping can be shown mathematically. And there's some concepts in Flintknapping that are best shown as mathematical principles with symbols and that sort of thing. Direction of force and fracture mechanics and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes it helps the Flintknapper understand what's going on. But most of the time, all that stuff is discussion points, things to discuss. Because when you're actually napping, the human brain takes over many of the processes involved in napping, so you don't have to be consciously aware of it. You don't want to be consciously aware of everything in Flintknapping. Now some of you might say, well, maybe you're not conscious of anything during, but only after the fact. Everything is subconscious, you might say, in Flintknapping. And in my opinion, you would be wrong. Everything in Flintknapping starts consciously, and then if you transfer, or the subconscious takes on certain roles. The brain adapts to the Flintknapping task, and it's a very wonderful machine in that it can split and compartmentalize different roles when you're trying to make something, so that your conscious mind can be devoted to your strategy instead of the tactics. You don't have to micromanage every single strike. Your subconscious can take over the tactical aspects, like exactly how hard to hit and that sort of thing. But your subconscious can redirect and course correct. That's what the conscious mind is for. It's for recognizing what's going on, course correct, and rationalize, and direct the activities that eventually form habits. Habits that become subconscious at the instruction of the conscious mind. At the direction of the conscious mind, and at the behest of the conscious mind. This is an interesting pocket. I'm going to zoom in on it. That's an ash pocket right there. Right in the middle. It just reared its ugly head for no reason. Yeah. It was hiding in there. So I could be using some steel for this operation. This is aluminum, 3/4 inch, 6061 aluminum, 3/4 inch diameter. I'm holding it behind my knee. I got to explain these things every single time I make a video because there's many people who have never seen flint knapping or me knapping specifically. I could use steel. Let's try using some steel. Since I've been using steel for quite some time, let's see what that does. Just for grins and giggles. How's that? All right? Even though that's not how you say the expression, that's the way I say it. That's the way me and my buddies used to say it back in the day. Grins and giggles. As you can see, I ran a flake there with steel. I ran a flake there with steel. I'll do some more thinning with steel. It does work on it, but you will notice a little pattern happening with the steel on the edge. You won't notice it in the flake scar. You'll notice it on the initiation point of the flake. So when it's said and done, when everything is done, you won't know which flakes I removed with steel or which ones were with aluminum, because I'm going to repair the edge. Same with trying to figure out if knappers back in the day were knapping with horn, bone, or antler, or hammerstone. You don't have all the information you need in order to make that assessment, because the edges are repaired and retouched and sharpened. So the initial impact is disguised by something else, by other flaking. So if anyone tells you that they know which tools were used, which materials were used to do what, they are guessing. They are not informed by any means. There's no means to know exactly how it was done in the past, because there's at least 2 different ways to produce the same flake scar. Well, you say, well, you can look at the flakes down there and see how the platforms look to determine how the point was made. Yes and no. Yes, you can look at the flakes down there and look at the platforms on the flakes, but many times the platforms are gone. They're not intact. And sometimes, even if you look at the platform, you can't tell if it was bone or antler or horn or wood in some cases. It's not 100%. In order to say that this was 100% made with antler, you have to have a test that's 100% accurate, or an analysis that's 100% accurate. And nobody has that. Nobody. And I think nobody will. So if someone tells you that they know what material was used to produce it, to produce the artifact, as far as tool material, they are guessing. Now, do they have evidence to back up their guess? Oh, yeah. Is that good enough? Some people think a test is if you can produce evidence in support of something. That's the test. See, I'm going to test this out by making it with antler, and it looks just like they did back in the day. Is that a test? No. That's evidence in support of something. It's not a test. It's now a possibility that it was made that way. It's a possibility. The only way to know that it was made that way is if you try many other methods and no other method can do that. A process of elimination is much more effective than the process of support. So the test is to use other materials to see if they don't produce that result. If they don't produce that result, then yeah, you've eliminated a possibility, so now you're closer to the truth. Try another method. Can you produce it with that? No? Okay, now you're closer and closer to the truth. You know, you've taken 2 steps. Try another material. Material number 3, it doesn't work. Now you're closer, even closer to the truth. And some people will say, well, I'm going to make 1 point out of antler, and it looked like the ancient guys. That's one test. I'll make 2 points with antler. It looks just like the ancient guys did. That's 2 tests. And I'll make another point with antler. It looks just like the ancient guys did it. So that's 3 tests. That's not how you approach the truth. That's how you do the testing on the method you're using. See if your method is consistent. It's not going to reveal how they were made in the past. It's only going to reveal one possibility. And all you're doing is you're reinforcing that one possibility. You're not putting your hypothesis to the test. You're just adding to the support of it. Which doesn't get you much closer to the truth. Get you a little bit closer, but doesn't get you much closer. You get much closer to the truth by eliminating possibilities. Okay. Another way to look at it is debunking is much more powerful than support. The trouble is these days, if you have the wrong kind of people doing the science, debunking is not rewarded. It's actually punished. Debunking is punished these days. You will pay for showing that there's a different way to do it. Because I spent all this time showing you one way. I don't need anyone to show me a different way. So you will pay for showing me a different way. Because it's not what I consider to be the way. And I've done it this way for years. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I suggest after years of being a dummy that you don't make it more years of being a dummy. If you've been a dummy for 30 years doing it a certain way, I suggest you don't make it 31 years. Nah, but I don't care. They'll continue being a dummy. So I'm using steel, right? But I'm being very careful because steel will shatter the edge. I'll go back to aluminum. And I do feel more confident that aluminum won't shatter the edge, so I'm going to probably be doing larger flakes. I was just doing little trimming flakes and I was getting some step fractures. I was trying to do damage control, but like I said in the beginning of the video, Dacite is very steppy. And yes, I got some steps. But now I'm going to try to send in some long flakes on this wide piece. See how it works with aluminum. Okay. A little bit different effect on the edge, just a little bit different. Yeah, it's very steppy no matter what I do. When you try to thin down thin dacite, you get that mess. It's already thin enough to make anything I want from it. But some guys want it to be paper thin because they feel sick to their stomach if they don't. Something in their brain tells them that this is going to make you feel sick to your stomach if you don't get it paper thin. It's funny how that works. We do listen to our gut in many ways, many different ways. And it's true that the gut does influence the brain. It even produces brain chemicals that change the way you think. So it's not just an expression that it makes you sick to your stomach. It's actually physically true that the gut influences the brain. It's a funny thing. The intestines produce hormones and chemicals and stuff. Brain hormones and brain chemicals. That's one reason why if you're not eating the right things, your brain gets all messed up. Yep. Someone mentioned that my abrader was too rough. It probably is, but I like it. All I gotta do is abrade a little more gently. Yeah. Some of you guys have been knapping dacite and obsidian for years, and you watch my videos, and I can tell you've been doing it for years because you come up with these pointers and suggestions that require years of experience to know about. But yet you can't make thin points. Some of you guys can, but a lot of the guys suggesting things, and I don't mind the suggestions, but I've noticed a lot of the guys that I've met and stuff have been knapping obsidian and dacite for many, many years. They have trouble making thin points from it. And yet they'll suggest some pointers that are true. But why can't you know that some of these pointers are true, but why can't you make thin points? Like I can use a smoother abrader so I don't create such a jagged edge when I abrade, but I can still make a thin point. How does that work? You gotta riddle me that one, Batman. And then you'll say, well, that's why you just got that. Well, I think I got that because it's concave right there. Not because of my abrader. It's because I hit into a concave surface. And why did I do that? Because I don't care many times. But other times I just forget what I'm doing. Yeah, I forget to check the contour. And yeah, that's what I did. napped into a concave area, and that's what I get. I didn't check it. Alright, so I'm not going to try getting it much thinner than this. I know some of you guys want to see a much bigger point being made. But as I tried to explain in the beginning of the video, it produces a lot of waste. I don't have all that much funding to be doing all this wasteful napping. 2 1/4 by 1 5/8. Compared to how it started, it's kind of small, yeah. But believe it or not, lateral dart points are this size in the archaeological record. Oh yes. Probably not this thin, although some of them are. Even thinner. Yep. How did they do it? How did they make them so thin? There's always one answer to all that. And the answer is practice. That's how. There's not one technique. There's not one tool. There's not one method as far as strategy goes. It's practice. What is one strategy? For example, so you guys can know what does it mean what does strategy mean? Well, I don't get it. I don't get strategy. What is that? I mean, I understand it's doing stuff in the scheme of things is doing stuff, little particulars, persnickities, yeah. But what is it? Give me an example. Well, this is a strategy here, indirect percussion. It is a strategy. Direct percussion is a strategy. It's also a technique. But you practice these different things. You can produce the same result with direct percussion as you can with indirect percussion, depending on how much you practice with each one. The strategy relates to, details. The details. Let's see, am I explaining this right? No, the strategy is not the details. The tactics are the details. The strategy is the technique, the overall technique. The tactics are the details. How long did you age the antler? Is it shed? Is it cut off the bone? How were you grinding the platform? To what angle? Those are tactics. Those tactics are very important. Yeah. Some of the tactics are taken over by the subconscious, some are not. Like the subconscious doesn't care if you use aged antler, that shed antler, or a antler cut off the bone. It doesn't care. But your conscious mind cares about it. Because your conscious mind is the one that recognizes that there is a difference in the way it can nap the stone. The subconscious just adapts a little bit to whatever you're using, so you don't have to think about it too much. But it's a conscious effort to get these step fractures eliminated. Subconscious don't care about that stuff. it just cares about how much I'm pushing on it. And how much of an angle do I put on it so I don't get step fractures. Of course the conscious mind does that too, but the subconscious, if you let it, can produce consistent results over time, over and over and over again, by habit. All right. I'm not going to be able to get all these step fractures out. Not with just this one piece of dacite. I haven't knapped dacite in many months. Doing this on the fly. Trying to explain different issues that arise as I'm trying to get this thin. From a perspective of being rusty, like a lot of you guys are. You're new, or you're not completely proficient, so you want to see something that's not completely proficient, so you know what issues to overcome. At least I think so. You don't want me to be fully practiced at this and make it look easy, and I forget where the hard to do things are in the process. I could have a lot of practice and I'll skip right over something extremely difficult to do because I no longer have trouble with it because of all the practice, and you won't even know that that is a very difficult area to overcome as far as an effective flake or something. You won't know that this one particular effective flake that looks so easy to produce requires many years of practice. Like when I drove this flake into here. I drove a flake into here to try to produce a big, wide, smooth flake. That's many years of practice because it was already very thin. And yet I sent a thinning flake in there without stepping. Many, many years of practice. I used to have a hard time with those. A really hard time. And if I'm rusty at it, you'll see that I'll get step fractures occasionally. So you'll know that it's a problem. But you won't know it's a problem unless I'm rusty at it. So you can ask yourself, who do you benefit from more? Someone who's kind of rusty at it, or someone who is an expert when you're watching them? If you're just learning, who do you benefit from more? It's an interesting question. Some might say, well, I just want to see the potential. Because I operate in the thought experiment realm. I don't really operate in the knapping realm. I want to see the potential, and I want to analyze artifacts according to how I see things potentially and examply. Yeah. Yeah, that's the way a lot of the lithic analysts approach it that way. And they forget that there's luck involved in a lot of these flakes. So just because you see the potential doesn't mean that that's all skill. It's not, you have to put luck into the equation. It's not just 2 + 2 = 4. It's not just skill plus time equals flake. It's skill plus time plus no issues in the material. Skill plus time plus no random thoughts going through the brain that'll mess you up. skill plus time plus inherent patience in your approach. Are you tolerant of having to regrind the edge every 5 seconds? Yeah, personality traits factor in there. You don't put. How do you put that into the equation? You don't. You only know that mood will affect your napping if you actually nap with different moods and see how the results are with different moods. Yeah. Sometimes you're in pain when you nap. Some techniques are painful to perform, like a series of very difficult heavy pressure flaking. At the end of your session, you're in pain, but you want to finish your projectile point. How do you factor pain into the equation? You want to see the potential of something. You get confused that, well, it has the potential, I've seen it before, but you're not doing it. And what causes that? A lot of times the causes are ignored. Okay, he had the potential to do it, but it didn't get done, so I'm just going to ignore that particular one and go with ones that I can explain, because I've seen them before. I've never seen, well, let me rephrase. Some will look at someone napping and everything's correct, and yet the flake didn't go. Something happened. The flake just didn't go. There's no excuse for it. It just didn't go. Material's fine. Everything looks fine. But they can't figure out why it went wrong, so they ignored that one. But that's not part of the equation, you know. Something went wrong. That's unexplainable. Not part of the equation. You can't analyze something like that using that method. That method of analysis is not good. Not good. It ignores things, so if you ignore things while you're watching napping, you ignore certain things, dismiss certain things. You're limiting yourself. How do I explain this? You're not approaching knowledge in the correct way. If you want to know how these things were made, we have to set up different scenarios, how they can be made and how they cannot be made. That's all we can do. One of the scenarios will be correct, hopefully, but we have to set up different scenarios on how they can be made. And the best we can hope for is to narrow it down to 2 different methods, in my opinion. In most cases, narrow it down to 2 different methods is the best we can get. So 50-50. In a lot of cases, there's many different ways to make something in napping, in flint napping. The same flake, many different ways to make the same flake. And sometimes a flake will look just like a flake that's made with skill, but it happens to be made with luck. Yeah, because the guy's not that skilled. But he happened to push it in the same way a skilled napper would push it, and it happened to work. It's not skill, it's luck. But it looks like skill, and you can't tell a difference between the two. You absolutely cannot tell a difference. So you can't narrow it down to just one thing. It's got to be a range of possibilities. I'm rambling because this part of the process is very tedious for me. At one time, I had a very difficult time doing this kind of stuff. Just picking at it, being extremely careful. Trying not to mess it up. Knowing that every flake I do could be a step fracture in weighting. Every flake I take on the edge could crush it. Because that's just the way obsidian and dacite is. And glass too. Could I have run parallel flakes on this? Yeah, with a thicker edge. I'm working on a thin edge and I'm trying to preserve as much width as possible. That's the strategy. Now the tactics are going to change up. I'm changing up my tactics here and there. Sometimes I'll take a pressure flake, sometimes I'll take a indirect percussion flake. I know it probably can get confusing between what's tactics and what's strategy. It confuses me too thinking about it. So I don't think about it too much. I try to explain it because some people, for some reason, they cannot grasp the knapping unless there's some sort of philosophical implication tied to each activity, or some sort of confirmation of a thought experiment tied to each and every flake. They just can't get it. It's got to be supported by some sort of thought. That's fine. Perfectly reasonable. That's one of the things that makes us human is the reliance on thought for everything. But I try not to think too much. It's very difficult for me to put a lot of these activities into words. And if I don't have to try to put them into words, I can goof around. I can goof around on video and talk smack and talk weird and make funny impressions or strange impressions. Get a little bit too familiar with my audience. Yeah. That's what I prefer to do. I don't prefer to go into the nitty-gritty of each and every flake. Nope. Yeah, I prefer to relax and let my habits take over. Alright, I'm just going to put notches in here. Just crunch them in. Today I was thinking deeply about making punch notches and going, I'm going to do it. I am going to do it. Yep, going to do it. Did I do it? No. Why? Well, those Instagram posts by the ADD people have paid off. Watching those Instagram posts because I got ADD. Yeah. Obviously. I know what to do. I know how to do it. I know with what to do it with. I just don't do it. I got an excuse today though. There was lots of people coming over for a birthday party. Yep. Birthdays. They're fun stuff. So I didn't do the punch notcher that would take me 5 minutes to make one. Nope. Couldn't take 5 minutes to come back here and get my little nail and make a punch notcher. Nope. ADD. Oh yes. That's what it is. Anyway, I also have the conflicts, right? I go, let's see, I got other things I need to do. I promised other people that I would make a knife or a pendant or an arrowhead or something. I got to get to those too. What am I doing making a punch notcher when I got stuff lined up? It's due. It's overdue. I didn't do the overdue stuff. What am I doing with the punch notcher? And I'm right now, what am I doing filming this hour-long video? I got other stuff to do on the side. Yeah. Stuff that will use up all my material. What am I doing using material I could be using for other people to make videos with? What am I doing? Well, it's a little bit different as far as that goes. I have to prioritize. When you have ADD, it's very difficult to prioritize. You want to try to do everything all the time and nothing at the same time. Like if you can't do everything, you don't want to do nothing. Yeah, that's the way it goes. Don't want to do anything if I can't do everything. Yeah, I'm bummed out that I can't do every single thing. And I do. I get bummed out that I can't do everything at the same time. I blew off the ear. It's an ear when it's on the base. It's a barb when it's up here on the blade. Now what do? I have to symmetritize it, but I don't want to. I don't want to symmetritize it because I like this notch on that side. I don't want to ruin it. Oh well. I just got to make sure I don't ruin it too much. Okay? Take it back, but not too much, because then I could really mess it up. I can almost symmetritize it. Yeah. How does it look for hafting? Does it look good for hafting? I can change the base up a little bit. It's good for hafting. I mean, it'll work. Do I want to make it perfect though? Now that I'm messing with the base, do I want to make it perfect? What do I mean by making it perfect? Well, if I stuck it in a perfectly V-shaped notch, like this, stick it in there, it's going to tilt this way. It's not going to be centered unless I take off the exact same amount on both sides of the center line. If I insert it into a perfect notch, it's going to go doop, like that. So I could make it perfect so it doesn't do the little canting to one side thing. When you have a cant to one side, you have to have a flat bottom notch so that you have room down there for it to uncant. Yeah, Now, if you look at the artifacts, a lot of them are like this. One side is bumpy, one side is flat. So that means it's got to be inserted into a flat bottom notch with room so you can move it to straighten it out. Nobody talks about that though. Nobody talks about it. You know, you see the artifacts with the weird stems and off-center bases from the side view. Like many Clovises, they'll have a deep flute on one side and a shallow flute on the other, and it's like this. Why? If they're going to go through the trouble of putting in thinning flutes, and the thinning is so important, why, when you look on the side, it's going to be canted if you put it in a perfect slot? You got to make a big old sloppy slot and stick it in there so you can move it around, even with Clovis. Why? Well, it's because the thinning isn't for balance. It's just for making it thin. The notching is, the notch that it gets put into is not that precise. There's a lot of wiggle room in there. They weren't worried about it. Now, there are some points in the archaeological record that have very consistent stems, very perfectly aligned along the center. That's different. That's different. They were concerned about their hafting in that way. Oh yeah. You get all kinds. I prefer not to be too worried about the side view on these, because I can make it work. I can just make a big old excessively wide notch and haft anything I want into it. Yeah. No biggie. No big deal. I don't have to stress over it. Nope. Let's see. I'm gonna thin this down. See how thin this barb is, and this one's thick. I gotta thin down the thick barb, just so it can be a nail biter. Yeah. You guys are not biting your nails yet. I can see you. You're not biting your nails yet. You're just sipping your tea and you're going, okay, well, these flakes are easy peasy. No, I'm gonna start making you bite your nails with this, because I can just take off the whole barb right now. Yep. See that long flake? It went right up the barb. Which one? This one here. Right up there. Made it thinner. And I pushed hard enough to snap that barb right off. Why did it not snap off? It's one of those things that requires years of practice. I know how much force I can use. Not all the time. Sometimes it will snap. But in this case, all those years of practice paid off. Still need to do a little more thinning. While I'm symmetrizing it, and I'm not going to do that much. I'm not going to do that much more on it. Come on, I need to do a little bit. Still looks kind of thick. Am I going to deepen those notches anymore? I don't have to. Nobody told me I have to. In fact, it'd probably be better if I don't, for the strength of the point itself, so it won't snap across the neck. But hey, throw caution to the wind. Make it snap across the neck. That way it can't be thrown back at you. Yeah. I get a lot of crickets when I say that many of these points are made for warfare only. And if they are used for hunting, it's just incidental, you know, just for convenience sake. Because you can trap an animal pretty easily. We can't do it these days because it's illegal. You can't trap deer unless you're, you know, trying to move them to a different location. You can't trap them when you're hunting them. You gotta shoot them. But back in the day, there's no such restriction. Yeah, so you just set up a bunch of nooses and you can catch deer with nooses if you know where they're walking. Yeah, you know you can spot their foot trails easily. You just set up nooses. Anyway, you set up traps and stuff. You can catch deer that way, and you can just bludgeon them when they're in the trap. You don't even need a projectile point or this kind of archery hunting gear, but you do need it for warfare. Now, why do I say, do I have any evidence to suggest the possibility that these were just incidentally used for hunting? Well, I do have some, yes, because I read books. I read I read 2 books, I guess that qualifies as some, on Mongols, the horse archers. Yeah. Where do they get their food from? Well, they got a lot of it from the herds of horses that they would use. They would ride the horses, but they would also take horses with them for food. What kind of food can you get from a horse other than the meat? Something called mare's milk. You can make cheese from mare's milk, or drink it straight. But the other method that they used to get food was go on hunts with their war weapons. They would organize hunts. Every once in a while, the commander would say, yeah, we're going to go on a hunt. We're going to use our war weapons, and we're going to kill everything within a certain area. Bears, deer, antelopes, anything in the area, wolves. We surround the whole area and then close in and shoot them with our war arrows and use our war spears mounted on our war horses. And yeah, there's evidence that means that there is evidence that they hunted with their projectile points and spears and all that. Does that mean that those weapons were designed for hunting? Nope. Can they be used for hunting? Yeah. Can you use combat skills for hunting, like one-on-one fighting with a bear or a wild boar? Yeah. That's not why you came up with those skills, though. But you can use them, adapt them to hunting. And that's what they did. And nothing says that the Native Americans did not do that. All right? Unless you assume they're dummies. Then, yeah, maybe they didn't think of that one. Yeah. Unless you think they're too dumb to use our war weapons to hunt animals with. Maybe that's what you're thinking. I don't know. But then you might say, well, there's Ishi, the less Indian. He used certain types of arrowheads for deer. Yeah. Yep. And if I remember right, the ones that he used for deer and the ones that he used for people were very similar. The ones for bear were smaller. And that sort of thing. Different arrowhead types for different purposes. But yeah, you can use your war weapons to hunt with, and I think it was done a lot in the past. Okay, so I think that's all I'm going to do on this. Yes, I'll risk breaking it if I make those notches any deeper. Let's risk a little bit, shall we? But it's blurry. Blurry. Yeah, I know. I still got to mess around with the camera to figure out how to unblurify it on some of these shots, some of these close-ups. Because it tends to focus on whatever's closest to it, like my hand when I'm trying to nap. So that means I got to nap in this corner here so that my hand doesn't interfere with the focus. Yeah, I got to nap over here in this corner. I want to be in the center. This is what I've trained my brain to do. Put the arrowhead in the center of the frame. It drifts down this way. Yeah, I know. But this is what I'm trained to do. But when I do this, see how blurry? It gets blurry. So I got to be like that now. Unless I can figure out a way to get that focus to stay put, regardless of what's in the foreground, like I just did right there. This is easy, and I'm seeing how it's centering itself on the arrowhead. But if I start to turn it around like this and start maneuvering stuff and putting the flaker in front, that little scanner, little square box, whatever it is, it disappears. It doesn't know what to do. If I get close and far away, it messes with it. Anyway, I could put serrations in this thing. Yeah. But I just wanted to get this Dacite video out of the way and do a little yapping. I think I might have to postpone the auction again because I have no points. Just what you see on video. I might postpone the auction again because if I want to make some stuff, I got to stay up until like 2 in the morning. And I don't like doing that. But there you go. Dacite is steppy. It's very crushy on the edges. You got to be very careful with it. It can snap at any time. You can have internal issues like this, where you put in incipient cracks from previous flakes. That might have been an issue, but it turned out it was all right. But sometimes those cracks, those incipient cracks, run deep. And Dacite is terrible when it comes to that because it wants to dive in. These flakes want to dive in, and you get that kind of step fracturing. I can try to clean it up from the base, but then I would have to lose, length off the base. Right. What length is it? Final dimensions. I kind of like this long format video stuff because I can just do whatever I remind myself to do. All right. 2 3/16. I want to drop it by 1.5 inches, a little more than 1.5 inches, 1 9/16. I don't have my scale to weigh it, but I don't think it weighs more than 100 grains. But that's in that little dart point. The average little dart foreshaft is like 1 centimeter wide, or maybe a little bit more. No, I'd say 12 millimeter to 16 millimeter. Let's see what the width of this neck is. It's like 16 millimeter width. So, you know, 5/8. That's within range of an that'll dart foreshaft width. Yeah, centimeter is a little bit too narrow for a that'll dart foreshaft, although I have seen them that narrow. Yeah, I would put the that'll dart foreshaft diameter in the 12 millimeter to 16 millimeter range, or no bigger than, what is it, 5/8 diameter. So this will fit. It'll also fit on an arrow, and a lot of guys hunt with this size on an arrow shot from a bow, but it's too big in my view. Okay, let's see if I can pick out that step fracture. I bet you there's some people out there going, wait, no, wait, you didn't pick it out. You didn't pick it out. It's so easily picked. Yeah, maybe, maybe not. I gotta sharpen it. Sharpen the little spatula. I probably already ruined my chances because I already took off some of that material that I can use to pick it. It's not picking. Let's see. Yeah, it's not picking because Dacite crushes. Let's see if I can get it out by smashing it. Is it blurry? Yes? Good. Try to focus on that. What am I doing? I'm using my abrader to crunch it, but it looks nasty now. See what you made me do? See? It's all nasty now. It was looking better. Some of you guys think, nah, just put a little mineral oil on that, it'll go away. Yeah, it'll just go away. Bye-bye. Mineral oil and bye-bye. I never put mineral oil or anything on my points. What the main reason is because it takes too much time. Too much time, yeah. The extra 5 seconds is too much time for me. And the other reason is if I want to sign it and it's all covered with mineral oil, the stuff rubs off. Yeah. Other people don't have that problem. Yeah, I know, but I'm not other people. If anything is on the surface, when I try to sign, it'll make it not stick. Yeah. All right, that's it. I tried to pick that out, but I couldn't. I just made it look worse, probably. I can probably get that out with a sharper tool. In case you're wondering, still wondering, how can you pick that out? But the easiest way is just to run another flake, if you have lots of experience. If you don't have lots of experience, you're out of luck. Let's see. Yeah, it's a long format video. Let's just see if I can run a flake even a little bit. I don't know. Let's see. No, come on. Do better than that. No, it's not going to run. It just took a little bitty short flake, and that's it. It's not going to run. It's Dacite. It doesn't want to run. It's lazy. Yeah. Anyway, it'll be available in the auction. Okay. That's it.